The legacy of the Pre-Raphaelite movement loomed large on the runways of fall 2023 as designers tapped into an enduring legacy of romantic rebellion to create lush and lovely yet off-kilter statements of feminine power. Some of the art world's earliest and most influential rebels. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood was a group of English painters, poets, and playwrights who came together in the early years of the Victorian era to challenge contemporary conventions in art. At the time, painting was still dominated by the classical principles established by Renaissance painter Raphael: symmetry, harmony, idealized forms, and aspiration towards heavenly aesthetics over faithful representations of nature. Rebelling against these ideals, the Pre-Raphaelites returned to the style of the Italian painting before Raphael's time, and opted for faithful depictions of nature and romantic representations of deeply human affairs, taking on mimesis and historical painting as central tenets of their art. Exploring organic and romantic themes, many of their resulting works centered around the connection between women and nature, or feminine creative power, while often subtly criticizing the social restrictions and alienation of their current time. This synthesis of a rebellious and romantic spirit with lavish, meticulous craft that celebrates the beauty of the natural world had an unexpected but very welcome revival on the fall 2023 runways. From Dries van Noten's layering of a myriad of craft techniques into statements of organic, idiosyncratic opulence, to Althusser's channeling of powerful women from Greek myth, the season blossomed with lush romantic details and a punkish playfulness. Delving into the history of the Pre-Raphaelite art and aesthetic dress is a thought-provoking and inspiring endeavor, especially if you like art history, fashion history, anything fantasy adjacent, medieval things, and velvet. I hope that revived interest in these movements means we will be seeing more aesthetic dress, inspired historical costumes. Pre-Raphaelite painters were subversive in their pursuit of such a distinctive art style, as it differed from the norm in Victorian society. Likewise, adjacent movements, like the arts and crafts movement, advocated for social reforms, and took strong stances in their group beliefs and morals. These movements were particularly opposed to the rise of industrialism, and promoted a return to a simpler and more bespoke sort of lifestyle. We think of them today as countercultural. Related movements to Pre-Raphaelitism and the arts and crafts movement include the dress reform movement and the aesthetic dress movement. If you are a fashion history buff, you have probably heard of the dress reform movement and how it influenced women's dress in Victorian society. Aesthetic dress was also a fashion movement that advocated for rejecting typical Victorian fashions and ornamentation in pursuit of more natural and simple silhouettes and motifs. Aesthetes and dress reformers alike believed this sort of dress was healthier than the heavily structured sort of dress that was typical in Victorian society. For example, aesthetic dress was often designed to be worn without a corset, in an effort to highlight a less exaggerated bodily shape. Lots of drapery, flowing fabrics, looser shapes, and nature-inspired trimmings are distinctive of aesthetic dress. Something special about tea gowns and aesthetic dress is that they arose in society at the same time that women's roles in society were starting to be questioned, diversified, and reformed. As sort of a nexus point between art, social commentary, and dress, aesthetic dress promoted development of individual senses of style and exercising self-expression. Since tea gowns were originally designed to be worn within the home, they offered an opportunity to experiment with aesthetic dress in an environment where women often felt that they had a heightened level of safety and personal agency. As time progressed, Aesthetic dress became more popular and influential on mainstream fashion. By the early 19th century, aesthetic dress began to influence haute couture designers, like Paul Poiret, and it had a significant impact on the emergence of Art Nouveau as well. There is much to be said about the aesthetics of clothing and its impact on society. The same can be said about the art of the Pre-Raphaelites. So it is interesting to see how echoes of this aesthetic style are beginning to appear in modern fashion.